Hello, hello. Welcome to today's live English lesson here on the Speak English with Vanessa YouTube channel. I'm so glad that you're joining me. You're taking time out of your busy day to improve your English. Today, we're going to be talking about where you are from. We're going to be talking about your country, but also your heritage. And that means where your parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, where they came from. Maybe they immigrated to your country 200 years ago. So let's talk about that together. And I know that I mentioned earlier that my husband would be joining me for this live English conversation, but our babysitter is not here. So Dan is watching our baby. If the babysitter comes, Dan will join me. But for now, it's me. So thank you so much for joining me. I want to let you know that if you enjoyed today's lesson about heritage and background and family and your ancestry, then I recommend joining me in August 2018 in the Fearless Fluency Club because our topic is heritage. You're going to be seeing a conversation between me and my friend Heather about her heritage. She has heritage from China, from England, from Scotland, from the Philippines. She has heritage from all over. So you're going to really get an in-depth look at an international person. You're going to hear a real conversation. So if you would like to join the Fearless Fluency Club and learn more about heritage and improve your English, you can check out the link in the description below this video. All right, let's get started talking about heritage and where you're from. First of all, let's talk about the basic question. When someone asks you, where are you from? Where are you from? The pronunciation for this question is not so straightforward. You might say, where are you from? But native speakers will not say this as often. Instead, we're going to say, where? Where are you from? It kind of sounds like where plus where, instead of are. So I recommend trying to repeat this pronunciation with me. Where are you from? Where are you from? Where are you from? Where are you from? And you might say, I'm from Nepal, I'm from Egypt, I'm from Brazil, I'm from Morocco, I'm from Russia. Thank you, all of you who are joining me live. You are from that country. That is the place where you live currently. Maybe you grew up there. You feel like your heart belongs in that location. But maybe your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents were not originally from that country. And at some point, almost everyone's families have moved around and immigrated to another place, my family as well. So today I'd like to share a quick little story about my family heritage and also show you some DNA. DNA is your scientific, it's the little pieces inside of you, your chromosomes that really show different things about you. My DNA makes my hair brown. My DNA makes my eyes brown. My DNA also shows which countries my ancestors have come from. The word ancestors means people from a long time ago. So it's not my parents, it's not my grandparents, it's before that. If you want to talk about your parents, your grandparents, you could use the word relatives. Relatives. These are usually people who you personally know. Maybe they're currently alive, or you just have known them in your life. They're your relatives. But if you want to talk about 200 years ago, these are your ancestors. These are the people who are the foundation of your family tree. And the word family tree is something that we often use to talk about the growth of your family. You might talk about your grandma, your grandpa, your parents, then your mom, your dad, then you, and then maybe if you have kids, it's adding on to that. It's creating a family tree. So today, I'd like to share with you a little story about my heritage. I want you to guess, first of all, where do you think my ancestors came from? I'm from the US. Right now, I live in North Carolina. And if you asked me, Vanessa, where are you from? I would say, I'm from the US. I'm from the US, the United States. Or if you are an American and you ask me, where are you from? If I said I'm from the US, you would say, I know, of course. But you might be asking more specifically, which state are you from? So if someone said to me, where are you from? And they are also from the US, I need to be a little more specific. So I would say, I'm from South Carolina. This is where I grew up, but I live in North Carolina. So if you have moved around a lot in your life, that might be a complicated question. Where are you from? But when we talk about heritage, this is my great grandparents and beyond. They are not originally from the US. My great grandparents, great great grandparents were not Native Americans. They did not live in this North American area 500 years ago. In fact, they didn't really live here 200 years ago or 300 years ago. They moved here, they immigrated here recently. Some of you have guessed Russia, some of you guessed Brazil, some of you guessed Italy, some of you guessed Mars, pretty close. Some of you guessed in Japan? Okay, well, actually, part of my family, we would say my father's side of the family. So you could use this as well. My mother's side of the family or my father's side of the family. Now, for my mother's side of the family, it's a little bit less recent. So the stories about their immigration is a little bit less close to me, but on my father's side, that's the expression here, on my father's side or on my dad's side, my great grandparents came from, what do you think? Italy. So my great grandma and my great grandpa, they were from close to the city of Naples in the US, or in English, we say Naples, not Napoli, but it's the same place. So they came from a farming village near Naples. And my great grandfather, he moved to the US. He immigrated away from Italy and he went to the US and he had a wife and then they had 3 kids, but this was the turn of the century. This expression, the turn of the century, means 1900, maybe 1910, around this time. He moved to the US around then and had a family, but his wife died. So he had 3 children. He also had to work. So he needed someone to help take care of his family. Maybe he was lonely too. So this is something that doesn't really happen nowadays. In fact, I'd be pretty surprised if this happened in a Western country nowadays, but he wrote a letter to his mother who lived back in Italy. And he said, Mom, I need a wife. I need a mother for my children. Can you help me find a good woman to help raise my children and move to the US with me? So she needs to be adventurous. She needs to be responsible and she needs to be willing to move far away from her family. So his mom said, don't worry, son, I'll do it. And she found a woman. She told him, this is her height. This is her width. This is her weight. You can get a wedding dress for her. So he got a wedding dress for her. He took a boat back to Italy and he met her. But one day, while he was there, he looked out the window of his house and he saw a woman walking by. And guess what happened? He fell in love with her, this random woman who was walking by, and that's my great grandmother. I don't know what happened to the other woman, but the woman who was walking by the window in Italy, she was much taller than the previous woman, so the wedding dress was too short, and in a lot of their pictures, her wedding dress is not touching the floor. It's quite short, but this was their story of true love, and she was willing to leave her family to go to Italy or go to the US and to leave her homeland to immigrate to the US. And really, this seems like an amazing story, but almost every family in the US has a similar origin story, a story of their heritage. And when she moved to the US, she had 3 children and then he died. So she had 6 children. It's quite amazing. She did it. She survived. Her children survived. And their children survived. And their children survived. And that's me. So this is a pretty typical American immigration story, especially around the turn of the century. Turn of the century is that 1900, 1910, around that time. So I used to think, I always thought that my DNA, my chromosomes were 25% Italian. It's my great-grandparents on my father's side, so I imagined that I was probably 25% Italian. But I recently found out the truth. The truth was a little shocking. So you might have heard of a website or a service called 23andMe. 23 is the number of chromosomes that you have in your body. And Dan, my husband, he bought this service for me as a present, and you spit, you use some of your saliva, and you send it to them, and they analyze your DNA to try to figure out where you are really from. Because maybe my parents were from a certain location, but what actually got passed down to me? And this phrasal verb, pass down, means something that you give to someone else. Maybe it's physically passing down. For example, this cup is not from my grandparents, but let's imagine that my grandparents loved this cup. Maybe they loved elephants. So they gave it to my parents. They passed it down to my parents, and then my parents passed it down to me. This is physically giving something to the next generation. But we can use that for your DNA or your chromosomes as well. And that's exactly how I use this. There are certain things that were passed down in my DNA. So I did this DNA test, and I'd like to show you. I'm going to share my screen with you. I'd like to show you exactly where my DNA says that I'm from. Of course, there's a little bit of uncertainty here, but it's pretty clear, and it's not 25% Italian. I want you to guess, what is the highest percent? Which country is the highest percent of my DNA? What do you think? Because I already said it's not Italian, you can probably guess that, but there are some other countries. In fact, Italian was maybe 3rd or 4th. So I'd like to know, what's your guess? What do you think is the top in my DNA? I'm going to share my screen here with you, and I'd like to show you the reality. I was also going to show you my husband's DNA, but unfortunately, I can't. Okay, I'm going to show you this. I can't because he's not here right now. So I want to make sure that he's here to talk about his own DNA. All right, you can see on the screen, it says Vanessa Prothy, that's me. And then you can also see European, 98.1%. This is no surprise. I am pretty certain that most of my ancestors came from Europe. But let's take a look at the highest percent. Oh, it says British and Irish, specifically the United Kingdom. So here it says that 19.8. So this is almost 20% of my DNA is from the UK. Maybe that's not so surprising. There were a lot of people from the UK who moved to the US, but let's take a look at the next one. This is the one that was the most surprising to me. 19.4% is French and German, specifically Germany. Now, this was really shocking to me because I know that Dan, my husband, has most of his heritage from Germany. And when he took this test, it was true. Most of his DNA came from Germany. And it's a little bit vague because there are a lot of changing borders within the last 500 years. But in general, they predict that my ancestors lived in Germany within the last 200 years. But let's take a look at Italy. Only 11.7%. How interesting. Even though my great-grandparents directly came from Italy, and I know that they came from Italy, I still only have 11.7% Italian DNA. And the next one is Polish. This was also kind of surprising because I always felt like my Italian heritage was stronger than my Polish heritage, but it's pretty close actually. 9.3%. So 9.3% of my heritage is from Poland. And then the next one is the Balkan Peninsula. Now, this is just generally this area. It's quite vague because there's a lot of movement within the people. So in the past 100 years, 200, 300 years, a lot of groups have moved around. But in general, they predicted that 3.4% of my DNA came from this area. And then we have the Iberian Peninsula. This is Spain and Portugal, modern Spain and Portugal. And I want to help you pronounce this word peninsula, because it could be kind of tricky. When you say it kind of sounds like a U, peninsula. So you're going to say that second U in the same way, peninsula. So the Iberian Peninsula. And then we also have some broad Scandinavian, maybe 2%. And then down here it says possibly some Western Asian, Turkish, then maybe Iraq or Iran, maybe within this area. It's quite low, but it's possible. And then finally, we have 0.1% North African. Oh, this is quite interesting to me because I never imagined this, but it seems like genetically it's pretty true. So this is a pretty cool website where you can see all of these things. We can see how recently my ancestors came from these places. We can see my parents. We can see the actual chromosomes. I think it's really interesting to see all of this. So I hope that that was a little bit interesting to you. And I'm curious for you, what would you say when I ask you, where are you from? Where are you from? First, you're going to say the country that you live in, but I want to know, what's your real heritage? Let me know in the comments, what's your real heritage? And when you ask someone this question, make sure that your pronunciation is accurate and is natural. So I'm going to help you to pronounce this question, and I want you to be able to pronounce it with me. Are you ready? Please try to repeat with me. What's your heritage? So make sure for that first question, it's pretty straightforward. What's, but then the second word, your, even though it is your, Y-O-U-R, it's going to sound like Y-E-R, your heritage. What's your heritage? And that final word, heritage, that final sound, heritage. What's your heritage? Well, I hope that you can use that question accurately and ask anyone who you are curious about, what's your heritage? Maybe even ask your parents. Maybe they've never told you about their great-grandparents or someone else they know in your family who has immigrated from another place. And I think for me, it's possible that even though my DNA is only 11% Italian, maybe those people who were from Italy, my great-grandparents, maybe their great-great-grandparents came from the Balkan Peninsula or came from East or Western Asia. Maybe those other parts of my DNA are actually from them, but their ancestors came from other places. You never know, because the world is really a small place, and within the last 300, even 400 years, a lot of movement and immigration has happened in other places. So I want to know, what's your heritage and where are you from right now? Let me know in the comments, and I hope that you enjoyed this quick, spontaneous lesson. We've talked for about 20 minutes now about your country, about heritage, and we've talked about some excellent useful vocabulary words, some phrasal verbs, some other expressions. If there are any words that you didn't understand and you'd like to ask me about, write a question in the comments. Try to use these words, look them up yourself, and I will try my best to help you. If you'd like to continue learning English with me, there are multiple ways. You can always subscribe to my YouTube channel. There are new lessons every Friday. Sometimes they are live lessons, sometimes they're not. But every Friday there is a new lesson here on my YouTube channel. So make sure you subscribe and click the bell to get a little notification. And then you can also read my free ebook, 5 Steps to Becoming a Confident English Speaker. This has helped thousands of English learners just to make the right steps, because there's a lot of options out there about how to learn English. So I hope that this free ebook will get you on the right path. Or you can continue to learn about heritage with me in the month of August in the Fearless Fluency Club. We're going to be focusing on heritage and this general topic with conversations, with vocabulary, with grammar, more pronunciation. So I hope that it will be really useful to you. You can check out the Fearless Fluency Club in the link in the description. And thanks so much for learning with me. I hope you have a beautiful day today, and I'll see you again the next time. Bye.